everyone, it's Kandace and Sher with Processing Trauma Out Loud. So good to be back with you today, Sher, to do a special Thanksgiving episode. We were talking before we hit record about how we just had some things that we want to bring to our listeners, and this will actually come out on Thanksgiving Day. So happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
So good to be with you and to kind of mark this in a way where we'll express some of the things we're grateful for, but to talk about some of the things that are probably significant to everyone, but particularly when we have childhood trauma, family events just bring up stuff. And so we want to just address that a little bit today too.
Yeah. Well, I'll just start us off, if that's okay, with naming a few things that I'm just feeling grateful for in this season. And I actually have several, but what's coming to me is like feeling so much gratitude for where I find myself right now in the healing journey. I think sometimes it can feel daunting, especially in the beginning, and that may be the first few months, it may be the first several years, but there can be this thought that, am I always going to feel this way? We don't want to rush anyone through that process because there's actually purpose in the grief that you go through and sometimes the anger that you go through. But I just feel like I'm in a completely different space now. Like there's more parts of me being integrated. And I feel more peace and rest that it's an ongoing journey. But yeah, that's one thing I'm grateful for is like, I feel, in a nutshell, I feel like I just can breathe easier. What about you?
Yeah, so beautiful, Kandace. There are so many things I could name, and the thing that really comes to mind the most, at least to start off with, is I am grateful for a particular person who has had a huge impact on this whole area of story work and healing trauma, and particularly for those of us who have experienced sexual abuse. And that is Dan Allender. And Dan has had a big impact on both yours and my lives, indirectly and directly. We mentioned a few weeks ago on the podcast that I came across his book in the 90s when I was in Thailand alone and really struggling. And all through my journey, I have been so impacted by his work. And then particularly now in the last 4 years where I got connected with So That, Lori Proctor and Jean Mazukovich through our story group, which then introduced me to the Pearls, who are such a huge part of my community. And then now another leader, Patria, and our WOW sisters. And so my life has been very significantly, and yours too, I know, but very significantly impacted by Dan Allender. And I just want to really express that on the podcast in a really significant way, how much his work and his voice and the cost that he has suffered even by doing this kind of work, how much I am grateful for him.
Yeah, I definitely echo that. And, you know, I also read his The Wounded Heart in the 90s too. Isn't it amazing that we found our way to each other through being exposed to his work and then ended up going through the Allender Center to have some training to be able to engage story and to be able to receive care from those who have gone before us. And yeah, just all the people you named, I wholeheartedly agree. I feel deep gratitude for, you know. Yeah. And, you know, which just leads me to it's very connected. And we've talked about this before, but just the the context of the healing that happens within story groups and the leaders that we've had, and just the collective care that comes from, I always say one on one is so powerful. And that's how most people start. But you're literally have to go slow to receive the kindness and care that is coming after you. And there's lots of reasons for that. But then you build up some resilience. I know this might sound hard to understand, but you actually have to build up resilience to truly receive and trust kindness. And then we expand to having more eyes and more ears on us, and I just feel so grateful for every group I'm in and been in and will be in.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's beautiful. One other thing that I will mention too, and this is a little bit different than people and groups but one of the things that I'm experiencing recently that I am so grateful for is beauty. And we've talked about this too off and on, but you and I were just talking right before we pushed record about I went for a hike yesterday, and it's the middle of November, and yet the color and the beauty that I encountered on that hike in Minnesota in the middle of November was astounding. And I felt like my soul was just taking in deep breaths. And my body is being impacted by beauty. And I think I always have, but I'm just so much more aware of it now. And I will pause and I will gasp and I will comment on the color and yeah, just the impact of beauty in nature, particularly, that is really so sweet for my body and soul right now. So grateful.
Well, it's a testament of how present you're being.
Sure.
Because when we are in survival mode, we have a hard time being present to the beauty around us. So
Yeah.
yeah, I want to mention. I want to mention one more thing. Like I said, I have several, and I know you do too. But I'm just really grateful for my family.
Mm.
Everybody that's been doing the hard work of healing and restructuring what my family looks like and is going to look like. And
Mm.
I just love each one of them with all my heart.
Mm.
And yeah, just, it's interesting. There's been hard things that we've been going through, and they're just showing up in such authentic desire and with a willingness to also heal and grow. And it's just, I mean, that's so beautiful to my soul.
So beautiful. I love that. And I'll mention something kind of connected to that in a way, but I'm grateful that it is possible to break generational trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And that my history is full of trauma back through the generations. And when I confronted it in my family 35 years ago, it was hard. And thankfully, my sister and I were able to do it together. But we found ourselves in a very messy place where relationships were shattered that have never been reconnected. And I have been estranged from my parents for over 30 years. And while there are things about that have been very difficult, I was committed to good boundaries for the sake of not putting my children in harm's way.
Yeah.
And I see my kids now, who are my son, who has 3 children, and how he and his wife are parenting their children while they are doing their work and learning about parenting and development and how to attune to their children in ways that, of course, I did not experience and that I was able to begin learning when my children were young, but to see them doing it much more, they study and they read, but doing it more organically. And because they're not having to pull themselves out of so many things that they have to unlearn. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to kind of blaze the trail for my family of breaking generational trauma, but I see them now in their own efforts of how they also are doing that and are standing against evil in our world that would assault humanity. So it's really beautiful.
That is so beautiful. The word legacy is coming to my mind.
Yeah.
That you started a new legacy for the future generations.
Yeah.
And such good, brave work. And it is beautiful. Yeah. Speaking of family, we want to just recognize that the holidays can be filled with lots of different emotions. We named nostalgia. We named joy. We named unfulfilled desires. We named people feeling like they have demands on them and expectations. And we were talking about how each person faces the holiday with their families or not, right? And you said something to me. You didn't tell me you were going to talk about this, but you can talk about it or not. You had said something to me about giving people permission for having something new or different than, quote, the traditional way things look during the holidays.
Yeah.
I feel like that feels so kind.
Yeah, I do too. I think we, in my family, we've broken out of traditions in a lot of ways, and we don't eat traditional food, and we don't do some of the traditional things. But I think what I was feeling as we were talking about this is particularly the people who are kind of new, they've had to establish some boundaries with family members, and maybe they're not even going to show up for the extended family experience this year. And sometimes there can be a lot of pain there of just knowing, like, what do I do if I'm not doing that, because tradition has always led the way. And I was talking with someone recently who is finding themselves in a very new and different situation going into the holidays. And I did just say to her, I said, if you need permission to not do the traditional things, I really want you to know I give you permission to create a new way, to find something that enlivens your soul and the soul of the people who you are going to be with. Mm-hmm. What do you really want to do? And that could be anything from take a hike to go to a hotel and swim in the pool, or have the traditional meal, but in maybe a different way. Like, what if there's no rules? And what if you can really do just what your heart desires to do? Just to leave space for that, even to dream of, well, what might that look like?
Yeah, that's so good. What comes up for me is this idea of not comparing. I think that can be a painful thing, especially with social media.
Yeah.
I have someone that told me the other day that they're going to take a break because it can be painful for them to see that they don't have what they long for. They want to be happy for others, but they're just going to guard and protect their heart by not indulging in that headspace of comparing.
Yeah.
And I just thought, oh, that sounds like a very kind thing to do to your heart, to your mind, to your body. Mm-hmm. Because we know during the holidays, lots of things go up. divorce rates, people with alcoholism, like all these things get increased during the holidays. And we know that because we've heard that from therapists and counselors that the holidays are really, really difficult for people.
And we don't know it because of what we see on social media. Because on social media, we see the pictures of the perfect setting, and we hear we read the sentence or two of "it was a wonderful time" or whatever, and so we can look at social media and feel like I'm the only one in the world who is struggling on this day. And yes, like the truth is, like, so many people are struggling with this day, and we are not alone. And there is real wisdom in just not going on social media on some of the days of the year. I have a few of the days of the year that I don't read. It's just too painful. And so yes, really a good thought there, Kandace.
Yeah. Well, we didn't really go into boundaries necessarily or what we can do. And I don't even think that's what we want this episode to be about. I think it's just more that, like, we see you.
Yeah.
Like, we see if, if you're in that space of feeling alone and struggling, you know what, reach out. You saying breaking out of traditions, like, we can also break it out of traditions of what is family, right? I mean, Sher, you're like, we're dear friends, we're colleagues, but you're like a sister to me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we would love to help you get connected with a community of women who you can do life with.
Yeah. And I think the thing that I would say too is be kind and gentle with your heart wherever you're at today. Tune into your little girl, because the pain often goes way back to a particular memory around the table, or something that was said, or a hurt that just has sat there for years and not been tended to. And how can you now even tend to your own little girl and come close to her with tenderness and kindness, and just go slow and bring love and care to your own body and soul? Like, I just bless our listeners to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I also want to say, like, this space of holding both joy and sorrow. I mean, we do have seasons that it feels like sorrow is predominant. Maybe we've lost a loved one or gone through something excruciating, painful. And so that it feels like more of a predominant emotion, but joy can emerge again. And yet, even in the joy, you don't have to think that you can never feel sorrow again. Like, this is something that more and more people are talking about. Like, what does it look like to be able to hold both joy and sorrow? That way, you can join someone in their joy and their rejoicing, and you can join someone in their sorrow. And I want to say authentically.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm just thinking, I will just share this. I'm thinking about our retreat a couple of weeks ago, and we laughed together and we wept together. And the tears are sometimes deep, deep tears. And then 2 minutes later, just uproarious laughter. And in the midst of deep grief, we are experiencing beautiful joy. And someone even said, there's nothing better than being in a space where both are so welcome. And I think we both wholeheartedly agree. Yeah. Kandace, I love sharing this space with you. And I'm grateful for you, friend.
Thank you. I feel the same way. And I look forward to going into the holidays with you and starting a new year here in just a few months. 2025 is right around the corner, Sher.
Yeah, I know. It's bring it on, baby. Bring it on.
Bring it on. Love you, friend.
Love you too.